In the early 1900s, Mary Harris, Mother Jones, used her dynamic personality along with extreme tactics to help laborers gain better work and living conditions through strikes across the United States. Her fearless leadership inspired countless laborers to take a stand and led to a legacy of strong unions and social justice for workers. Mary Harris Jones's involvement in labor did not begin until later in her life, when after a series of tragedies, she had lost her husband, her children, and her livelihood. It was then at the age of 41 in 1871 that Jones joined the Knights of Labor in Chicago. The Knights of Labor had been founded by Uriah Stevens in 1869. The main focus of the Knights of Labor was to bring together all the laborers into one union, to have an 8-hour workday with better wages, an end to child labor, and all around better work and living conditions. Terence Powderly was hired in 1879 and soon took over as head of the Knights of Labor. At first he was praised for his peaceful boycotts and negotiations. Over time, people noticed that enforced strikes were more successful than Powderly's peaceful boycotts, which proved to be ineffective. More and more people started supporting the idea of strikes, and soon participation in the Knights of Labor declined. Jones herself, supporting the idea of strikes, looked for more effective organizations to work for. She believed issues like the corrupt mine town system needed more drastic measures to make change happen. The mine towns controlled every aspect of the miners' lives. The miners and their families had to shop at stores owned by the coal mine company. Miners lived in houses owned by the mine companies and had to pay large amounts for rent and taxes. If the miners asked for a raise, the mine owners would in turn raise the prices on necessities and rent. Some miners were paid in scrip, which was worth very little outside of mine towns. Mother Jones felt that the United Mine Workers of America, or the UMWA, could aid in gaining rights for people in the corrupt mine towns. The UMWA was founded on January 25, 1890 by John Lewis, with the purpose of helping miners acquire better wages, fair contracts, and better working conditions. Mining conditions in and before Jones's time were horrific. The miners faced extreme difficulties, endangering their lives on a daily basis. In the mines, there was no electricity, so the miners would use flames to see. Some parts of the mines were unsturdy, so that the mines would often collapse on the miners while they were working. Not only was there coal dust flying around in the mines, there was also methane gases that led to severe cases of lung cancer in the miners. On top of all of this, if any issues happened in the mines and their families wouldn't get any compensation. In 1897, Jones joined the UMWA. Jones had a talent for inspiring people through her public speaking, which she seemed to have inherited from her Irish parents, who were forced to leave County Cork, Ireland, for rebel rousing. The UMWA would use this talent to their advantage. They sent Jones to different mining towns trying to gain the support of miners and unionize them. Unionizing was very risky for the miners. If they were to strike and the outcome is not what the miners wanted, there could be severe consequences from the mine owners. The mine owners could cut pay, increase taxes and rent, and even fire workers. In June of 1902, Mother Jones was put under arrest by a U.S. Marshal after disobeying an injunction to stop her speeches. Jones was known as Mother Jones to many, as she was like a motherly figure to them. Lon Savage, a former miner, stated in an interview,
Well, they loved her. They called her Mother Jones and looked at her as a mother. She loved them, they loved her. And that was their relationship, sort of a mother-type relationship.
Not only was Mother Jones tirelessly helping to fight for miners' rights, she also fought for improved child labor laws. In July of 1903, Jones led 200 child mill workers and their parents on a march from Philadelphia to President Theodore Roosevelt's summer home in Oyster Bay, New York. This, the March of the Mill Workers, as it is known, drew publicity to the striking workers, and the next year the National Child Labor Committee was formed. But it is with the miners that Mother Jones had the closest relationship, returning time after time to help them.
She would go to mine mouths, and here, this 70-year-old woman at that point would go, actually, into the mines and down into the tunnels and meet miners down there at the face digging coal. And she at one West Virginia mine up near Fairmont, I believe it was, she sat on a rock near the pit mouth and she said, "Come, my children," and that kind of thing. And the miners would come, one by one, 2 and 3. And finally, they were almost afraid to listen to her, and they slowly gathered around her as she would say, "Do you know the kind of life you are leading, my children?" And then she began to speak, and the power of her voice and of her speaking ability, the fact that she was an old woman who was there, was an attraction in itself. They just were mesmerized. And finally, one came forward and said, "Don't tell us that there's Mother Jones. That's Jesus Christ come back again in the form of an old woman," something like that. and she would come back again and again. She came back to Paint Creek back in the turn of the century in Cabin Creek. Then she left around 1904 and didn't return again until that June morning in 1912.
That June morning in 1912, the UMWA sent Mother Jones to encourage the miners to join their union. Jones and Frank Keeney, a former miner and unionist for the UMWA, went to Cabin Creek, West Virginia to rally the miners. The miners, encouraged by Jones, got their guns and started striking. The first thing they wanted to accomplish was to be free of the mine guards. Mine guards were people hired by the mine owners to keep miners in line when there were talks of a rally or coup before the strike could get out of hand. These guards were armed with guns and other instruments of violence. Mother Jones knew the striking miners needed help, and in August of 1912, she led 3,000 armed miners to the governor in Charleston. While in Charleston, she gave the governor the ultimatum that if the mine guards weren't gone in 24 hours, the strike would turn to violence and total madness. Mother Jones then traveled to Cabin Creek, where there was a larger number of gunmen.
While she was gone, things became very violent, culminating in the famous incident of the Bull Moose Special in early February of 1913, when an army train went through the miners' camp at Holly Grove, and a machine gun sprayed out bullets, and both sides were shooting, and there was, one miner was killed and several were shot and injured. And it was a turning point for the strike. Mother Jones was away at that time. She arrived back in Charleston just about the time all of this happened. And one of the first reactions of the state, Governor Glasscock, was to apprehend her, and she was arrested on the streets of Charleston and spirited away to a little cabin on the Kanawha River at Pratt, where she was held prisoner for about 3 or 4 months, all during the late winter and early spring of 1913. That really created a whole new cause and a new focus for the miners' mine war. Suddenly, the whole country began turning on this poor little 80-year-old woman being held as a prisoner without charge in a little house there on the Kanawha River and in West Virginia.
Mother Jones stayed in jail until May of 1913, when publicity focused national attention on the strike and forced her release. On September 3, 1913, in an article in the Fairmont, a West Virginia newspaper, MP Davis, the president of the Cabin Creek Consolidated Coal Company, stated that there was no trouble until Mother Jones got there.
Davis denied that guards were placed to prevent miners being unionized, but testified he had given instructions that no strikers should be permitted to come up the creek without his knowing their business.
Between the bloodshed and the arrests at Cabin Creek, the miners gained what they most wanted, which was to publicize this event and bring their conditions to national attention. In one newspaper, Jones remarked,
"The American people would rise up and protest, as they have done on several occasions, forcing Congress to take action to prevent further murders and violence."
After the Paint Creek Cabin Creek strike, Jones continued to work for the UMWA for 10 more years as a strike organizer until she was 92 years old. Mary Harris, Mother Jones, died at the age of 100 on November 30th, 1930. With Mother Jones's passing, she left behind a legacy that will never be forgotten. Her legacy lives on in the industrial workers of the world, or the IWW that she helped found with other women to aid in the fight for equal working conditions. The IWW still works today to make sure there is equality for all working people all over the world. In February 1976, the magazine Mother Jones was first published. The magazine, named after Jones, is written for the people, by the people. The magazine focuses on investigating and reporting on political and social justice issues, which is what Mother Jones believed in. In her time, Mother Jones was considered the most dangerous woman in America because she took a stand and would not back down. Although those in power saw her as an agitator and a radical, those whom she helped saw her as a savior.
I am considered a Bolshevik and a Red and a W and a radical, and I admit being all they charged me with.
Through her powerful words and actions, she inspired others to follow her. Mother Jones helped laborers take a stand and fight for their rights.
And I long to see the day when labor will have the destinies of the nation in her own hands, and that she will stand a united force and show the world what the workers can do.